Ed, good to see you, my friend. How are you?
I'm so happy to be here on this lovely afternoon.
I don't know about that trip back from Costa Rica. I think that might be a little bit better place than Denver, although the weather's pretty nice here.
It is, and I'll tell you what's funny is you always know that it's a clan of real estate people when literally everybody is on their cell phone and staring at a laptop the entirety of vacation.
Yeah.
So that's what it was. But very grateful to be busy. I always fret towards the end of January, even though we've been through this before, but wondering like when the transactions are going to open up, and it's always right around the third week of February. So that's about where we're at, and we're
Okay.
starting to get busy.
I love that. Well, tell me a little bit more. Tell the audience a little bit more. Who are you? What do you do? Why did I invite you on this podcast? Because I think, you and I have a history. We meet weekly at this point in time talking about
Right?
business, mental transformations, growth, really entrepreneur to entrepreneur, helping each other grow our businesses. But tell the audience a little bit more about what you do.
My name is Ed Prather, born and raised in Colorado. I got licensed back in real estate after studying finance at the University of Colorado. But back in 2007 and went full time in 2010, mostly on the investment side of things, doing some flips, some rentals, and things like that. But then after many years and doing some out of state investing, got pretty serious about brokerage around 2017, started the team in 2019, and now we're a group of about 15 that does about 125 million a year, which I'm very proud of. And then, you know, us real estate folks just can't help ourselves. So, I do some investing, some flipping, and actually some social service investing along the side of all this stuff.
That's awesome. Well, we're very humble, and don't let Ed fool you with his demeanor. He's extremely successful, runs one of the biggest brokerages out here in Colorado, if not the biggest, Ed. So you've done a hell of a job. But I want to go back to what you just said of going from, playing in the flip side of things to actually transitioning into a broker. What were the decisions that you had to make, or what was going through your head when you were creating a vision for yourself that led you into actually taking those next steps for the brokerage?
That's a great question. In 2016 and 17, I was doing a lot of business in Omaha, Nebraska, and a partner and I were buying a lot of small multifamily with the intention to reposition. And so that would be improving common areas, turning the units, updating countertops, everything you could possibly think of. And although it was a great business, for one, my little girl Lily was born in 2017, and I was out of town a couple times a month at that point. But also, I had started to think, and I don't know that I would agree with this, frankly, because I think that there's still plenty of upside in this. But when you are operating on pure speculation and relying on market conditions, at a time when I needed more security, that didn't feel secure.
Hmm.
When we're just really hoping, the absorption rates in that sector of multifamily stay stable, and or that interest rates remain friendly. And so I had made sort of the conscious decision, as you can imagine, that hey, we were using the shovel to reposition and rehab all of these properties, and there was a whole bunch in the brokerage side of things in my mind. Although I had done quite a bit, that really, I see that as selling the shovel.
Hmm.
Like there's no real risk.
Hmm.
It's extremely competitive, extremely hard, but that's sort of the reason why is to increase kind of the level of security and to get back home and start operating in Colorado to be around the family.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think, there's a lot of people out there that are looking at career changes. They're looking at, hey, what's the next thing? I'm maybe not quite satisfied with where I am in my career or what I'm doing, or maybe my business isn't taking off, or I've been thinking about starting a business for a long time. So when you were looking at your life, when you were saying, "Hey, I want to get back home. I want to have a little bit maybe more stability or security in my life." Was that something that you tackled by yourself? Did you tackle that with your wife and the family collectively? Kind of what led to those changes so people may be able to apply this outside of real estate to their own lives?
I was feeling a lot of friction, and I can't help but be pretty aware, and just sort of like, at least trying to take a step back and go, something isn't quite right here. And I was helping, well, I should say, a friend was helping me and letting me be a guinea pig in some business coaching, and
Mhm.
he gave me a little push to go to the Unleash the Power Within event
Okay.
from Tony Robbins in
Hmm.
2017 in March. And I would say that that's still to like even today is one of like two or three fundamental shifts in my life, and just that the mindset. And I had gotten to the point where it was, how could I compete with all these 40,000 agents in Colorado? And of course we see that there's a path, and so that was really, that was feeling the friction, and that being kind of the release or being the answer to that. So I think much in, like we see in a lot of times in life, it was coincidental.
Hmm.
I believe that we're right where we're supposed to be. Everything we've done has led us to this very moment right here.
Yeah.
And I think there was a reason that that conference happened then, and it shifted the entire pathways of my career and life.
Yeah. Bless you. No, I think that's great. And obviously Tony has been around now for almost 50 years and he's very instrumental and I think motivating a lot of people. Well, one thing, you and I share similar experiences in that I think number one, we're both pretty driven. Being an entrepreneur, you kind of have to have a specific mindset. There's always risk. And even when you were going from the flips to, hey, I want more stability, I'm going to start a brokerage, that's not an easy task, right? There's still a huge, huge undertaking that goes along with that adventure. So, what were the first when you made that decision? One, you're not a person that tends to look backwards. You say, "Hey, I'm going to make a decision. This is the direction we're going," and then you go. And I can say that confidently because I know you pretty well at this point. But
Sure.
once you made that decision, kind of what number one was the first few things that you had to prioritize? Did you have to get your house in order to some degree? And then number two, how did you mentally prepare knowing like, hey, there's still risk. There's still a ton of work that has to get done as I'm fighting for more stability in my life. It could be a longer term game. So how did you prepare yourself for that?
I think part of it is ignorance. I think you probably remember too, Nate, back in the day, you're like, "Oh yeah, I'll start another couple of businesses."
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're like, "Ooh, are you sure about that?" But there's this different thing to. First of all, I'm just like you said, there's something special or a little crazy about entrepreneurs. But but those of us that have taken this path, I think we could also say that it's in our blood.
Hmm.
And so I I never consider, I don't think I could like get a real job or like a normal job at this point, and probably not back then. I mean, I've been on my own since 2010. And I think when you've got a big why or a big purpose, it's not like my big why is to go make like $20 million a year to take care of my family. It's that minus the first part.
Hmm.
Like all I care about is taking care of my family.
Hmm.
And when it comes to that check mark or not, I will not accept not doing it.
Yeah.
And the way that I really like real estate in the sense that you can leverage the skill set in so many ways.
Okay.
So if I were going into coding or if I were going into online marketing, I would be terrified because I don't know. We know that most markets are very efficient.
Hmm.
So to step into something new and then have to make a certain amount of money to cover whatever,
Yeah.
that's scary. And I think what I did was scary as well, but sort of the blind confidence that's good sometimes and not so good others. But um, the first thing I did, like, I mean, if I were to coach somebody, I would say go find a really talented coach and hire them.
Hmm.
And that's what I did. So one of the industry leading coaches, I got back from Tony Robbins within a couple of days. I signed a lease at 3570 East 12th Avenue in Congress Park. It'll always be near and dear to me. That was like a 300 square foot room. And I had
Yes.
an intern in there.
Yeah.
Um,
Janitor
and I
closet.
hired a coach. Like, like those two things there really changed the trajectory. But that's not to say, I mean, in 2019, we launched the team in March. We being myself and my wife. My wife and I were very clear about how we were going to do this, and that was I was going to go build the team. She was going to take care of our girl at that time, and she was not even with us at that time. I mean, it was amazing, but by September, that ship was just sinking badly. And you could look at the bank accounts, at the equation, if you will, and it just wasn't going to work. It wasn't working, and it was because I was really fighting the system, and I wasn't doing the really hard work that you have
Mhm.
to do. And the really hard work in our world and in that context was generating bottom of funnel leads for a CAC, a customer acquisition cost that made some sense.
Mhm.
And there's a big way to do that is to call expired listings, and those people get called a lot. I mean, like 50 to 100 times a day. So
Wow.
it's really, really difficult. But I was either going to go one of two ways. I remember it vividly. So number one, I was thinking, hey, I can just say, like, my friends are still going to like me. My parents are going to love me. If I just go, hey, it didn't work in Denver. And did if it doesn't work, it's okay. But I would ask, and I would ask you or anybody else who's thinking about changing, have you really tried? Like,
Mhm.
have you really, and can you hang your hat on
Yeah.
that? And I hadn't, so I just said, hey, I'm gonna dial, and I dialed a lot, like 8 hours a day, and I said 17 appointments. We sold 11 of those houses. That gave
Yes.
me the ability to hire an ISA, which is an inside sales associate, which is what role I was playing. I had done it, so I had the credibility to coach and teach that person.
Mhm.
That person was really talented very quickly, and it allowed us to then take a chunk and sort of on a leap of faith start investing in radio. And who to thunk it, but now it is February, March of 2020, and then the pandemic hits, which very quickly causes one of the most incredible buying sprees in housing history. It's unmatched what happened, and it was still hard, but it was a volume of transactions that I would be lying if I didn't say helped. And
Mhm.
so I think, what is it? I'd rather be lucky than good. Um, there was luck there, and I'm happy for it. The timing was good, but it's funny because as you can kind of see, there was this like very, in my mind, especially very sequential steps where it's like, oh, you did this, and you did this, and you did this. And I think the biggest thing is my mind shift at that Tony Robbins thing where it's like, oh, it's all possible.
Yeah.
Like it's all there.
Yeah.
But you better be willing to work.
Yeah.
And so, gosh, it's still very, very hard. But it's been quite a journey. And now I can say, I mean, we pale in comparison, pale in comparison to some of these like big New York things. But I never thought we could possibly do this much volume. I didn't
Yeah.
think it was just like not it wasn't even a block. It just like what didn't exist.
Yeah.
So that's fun to break that down, and it's not that wall that comes down; it's the brick by brick, and then all of a sudden you like see this like light shine through, and you're like, "Whoa! I got somebody who actually wants to buy a house. Reach out to us rather than chasing and chasing." And
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's been fun.
Yeah, no, I mean that's you have a hell of a journey for sure, and I've had the privilege of being around for a couple of years to
Yeah,
watch you grow, and just going back to the pandemic situation, yeah, that might have been a stroke of luck of kind of what happened in the greater scheme of things for sales. I don't think anybody saw that coming, like you mentioned. But the key thing is you did the critical things up front, right? You built the skill sets so you could take advantage of that opportunity when it came. You weren't waiting around and then luck just happened.
Sure.
The situation changed. You were prepared because you had already put in that work. And that brings me back to a conversation that I've been having recently. I was actually sharing this with somebody this morning,
Sure.
and which is, as of late, I've kind of felt like there's been more on the table than I've been putting in, if that makes sense, right? I haven't really gone hard at specific things. And where I'm going with this is bringing it back to you in terms of the work and what you were doing pre-pandemic, so you could take advantage of that. But
Right.
it is that stage of specifically starting your own business where things have to get done, but you're not doing them, right? And one of the things I
Right.
admire the most about you is you are always analyzing good or bad environment. You're still saying, hey, I'm plateauing over here. My metrics could be better. You're always looking at, hey, where can we squeeze a little bit more out of this? Where's that potential? Where am I not harnessing the team in the right way or the market in the right way? Are my dollars being spent in the right areas? So can you talk about
Right.
kind of that analysis and maybe how you apply that to the greater part of your life as well?
I'm really glad you brought this up, and I think that you and I are both good at this, or and to some extent, I think it's binary. Just the getting over the idea that we are right because we want to be right,
Yeah.
and saying, God, like, what if it wasn't right, but what if it could be?
Hmm.
So what I joke about this all the time because I've had so many reps in certain spaces, and I've had zero reps in most spaces. But with I've been in thousands of homes, and I've done at least hundreds of listing presentations, and I've probably given 500 sales meetings. And I can tell you that there's been some stinkers in there. And so what I would say, kind of like, I mean, in response here is the ability to be aware has just changed the world in so many ways. And I think, strategically, you could call it an after action review. So we
Hmm.
had our trip to Costa Rica last week, and we took a few minutes, the leadership team on Monday, to say like, oh, what worked and what didn't. Like, okay, this was cool. This transportation thing was a little clunky. This and that. And I think we need to be doing that ourselves.
Hmm.
And just like, I mean, we have one uniform asset that we can, like, it is all apples to apples, which is we all have 24 hours. And when you're an entrepreneur, it's so easy to put time towards things that don't make sense. And I mean, I love designing logos. I mean, like, that was part of the problem in 2019. I got so stuck
Yep.
on, like, okay, we got the hue of blue that's good, and all this stuff. But like, you got to be aware enough to go, gosh, there's a million things to do. And I'm struggling with it right now, Nate. I'm not kidding
Hmm.
you, because
Hmm.
I've got 4 or 5 big initiatives. And within those, you could probably create a strategic plan for each of these. And so then, if you were really smart, or at least I see really smart people, but they're getting even more and more clear. So, okay, out of the strategic plan, what needs to happen now to move things forward?
Yeah.
So that would be the nail, right? That we need to, like, swing our hammer to hit. The only problem is if you have 4 nails, which one do you go for?
Yeah.
And so being able to say no to things, or just, it's really awesome, but it's not as awesome as this other thing. And I really like, you and I have talked about this a lot, but we as entrepreneurs start to create this idea that, like, hey, this is working, but I'm going to pretend it's not working, and I'm going to break it, and there's no need to break it.
Hmm.
And that's the problem, rather than just like, why don't you just refine that and push the gas?
Yeah.
We're talking about opening other, you and I have talked about all sorts of digital marketing and stuff. And I think back sometimes, I'm like, how would I be competitive in this space? In given the fact that I'm competitive in this other space, why wouldn't we just do more of that?
Yeah.
And so I think what I'm getting at is us all whether you're an entrepreneur, I mean, you don't even have to be, but people with big lives who want big lives and want to achieve a lot, have a lot going on. And so I think for one, you have to accept that not everything's going to get done. And number two, you have to be like cutthroat with your
Hmm.
time and to really say like, hey, there's four nails here. And I mean, the most effective person is going to just like get rid of three of those nails.
Yep.
But I just can't. Like,
Yeah.
I can't. Part of it, like the brokerage, I have 20, 25 people now that I really like. I'm responsible for, so I can't let that nail wither.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
if you want your garden to grow, you gotta water it. So really, I think it's just being really disciplined with your time and your resources, and really like digging into leverage. I've always had a hard time with the VA model, and it's completely a me thing. I just can't. I don't outline, I don't shoot the loom videos, the do it once so then they can do it. And so I think that's probably a mental block there,
Hmm.
because at the end of the day, uh, I mean, the world keeps turning, whether we like it or not. And I want to know, like, I mean, a big part of my world and my being is trying to live up to my potential. I
Yeah.
really believe that most of us are living under our potential. So with a few tweaks, once you break through that, like the David Goggins thing, it's amazing what's out there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you're going after your full potential. I think that's something that most people don't really think about. Obviously, it's the foundation of habitual growth, right? Delivering the
Right.
best version of you. Where that came to be was, not that long ago, less than 5 years ago, I was kind of this quote unquote from
Right.
the outside, I would say semi-successful person working in a corporate environment, had a great family, had a house, all those things. But I kept thinking to myself, well, I'm not, there's more that I want to do, right? I feel like I'm in this box and I have to figure out how to claw my way out of the box. It's not easy. And I think that's whatever part of your life that you're in, whatever season of life that you're in, whether that's starting a business, whether that's there's no right time to have a kid or you're going through marital issues, you have to go get an education because you want to level yourself up in terms of your skill sets, whatever that is. One thing that I've learned specifically over the last couple of years is just accepting the difficulty of what it is, right? Like you said,
Right.
you can't do everything all the time. So you have to focus on your top one, your top two, your top three nails. You can't hit all four. You have to figure out how to assess that. But most importantly, you also have to realize you're going to need to take a few swings of the hammer at those nails. And occasionally you're just going to miss the nail completely, right? And you want to make sure your thumb's out of the way, right? You're going to at
Yes.
least hit the piece of
Yes.
wood or whatever it is. But I think that's really important because it's something that has drastically changed my outlook, number one, on life. And number two, the amount of joy and maybe not joy, but just appreciation and gratitude sometimes even for the challenges because life is hard no matter what you choose, whether you choose a lazy path, whether you choose a hard path pushing a boulder up the hill. There's always going to be struggles, and I think that acceptance of, hey, this is difficult, this comes with the territory, I'm okay with it up front, alleviates a lot of the frustration sometimes that can come back from the pushback or the tripping and the falling that goes along with the day-to-day environment.
I think that's well said. And I think you make a good point in that like it's all hard. And you know, I don't know if lazy is the right word in my mind. Only in like my context, I feel like it's like uninspired,
Okay.
or uncompelled, where it's just like this person just doesn't care enough about XYZ to take action to do XYZ. But maybe they're a cinephile and they really like watching Netflix. But what's interesting though, like it's all hard.
Yeah.
So if that person wants to do that and is then not making the appropriate sacrifices to make ends meet, then it's going to be difficult because you're fighting a power company that wants
Yeah.
to turn on
Yeah.
power. Or your car breaks down at the wrong time, or the payroll system goes down, or our CRM system goes down, and in the it's so easy to say like, oh my God, like that's not fair.
Yeah.
There's no fair. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just gravity.
Yeah.
Like it's just
Yeah. I like
gravity happening
that.
all the and I never thought about that, but it's just you can't avoid it. And so I think, and like it's interesting because I think you do this as well, but like you've got to like add this little layer into the equation of that crazy chaos that's happening and be like,
Hmm.
oh, I used to be guilty of trying to uh, schedule to like the 15-minute mark. Like, oh well, I'm gonna get into my car at this time, and then it's gonna be two calls worth of driving, and it just doesn't work that way. What was interesting is you said something before, Nate, that really is interesting to me, and it was, 5 years ago, you were framed, packaged up as a successful person, and what I gathered is, despite the corporate job, like you weren't happy, you had something
Yeah.
kind of like biting, kind of like poking at you. And that's where I think it's really tricky. And we have to really listen. And I've always been bad at meditation, but just recently I've wanted to get into it, or get back into it. I love, Headspace and some of this stuff, but whatever. But is to listen to that poke
Yep.
and go, you know what? This isn't quite right. And I've had to do that with the brokerage too.
Yeah.
Uh, the position that we're at, and I think most team owners, if you are not in production, it's like no other business that it's extremely competitive, and it is you're fighting for every dollar, right? And having that feeling of like, there's this inefficiency that I don't want to look at because it's uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And maybe it's with a tenured employee where you're like, but I don't want to have that conversation, or I don't want to have that conversation with myself that I'm on this path that means nothing to me.
Yeah.
And so those folks that are taking the first step, that are in habitual growth and holding themselves accountable to the vision that they set up. What's interesting is like we're setting up our own framework.
Hmm.
Like this isn't somebody else dictating, and that's what's so special about it is the idea that we can build a bigger vision and that we are in control of that.
Yeah.
And that's what I love. That's what I love about habitual growth is you can see yourself marching in the direction that is fulfilling to you because you designed it.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I want to step back and pull on a thread that you had mentioned about kind of inefficiencies a little bit earlier, which is, inefficiencies when you see them, when you are aware, maybe it's that internal monologue or whatever. But I know at times you and I have had some pretty in-depth and robust conversations around feeling stuck or getting stuck, whether that's in your personal life or professional life. You are a master of organization. I don't think I've seen anybody that has the level of organization
I don't know if
uh,
that's a good thing
and
though. I mean,
attention to
like,
detail. Well, I think it works for you, right? I don't think it's a one
right,
size fits all. I think I mean, I've told you this directly. Your level of management, I would say, I would spend too much time for me, but it works with you, and you move a lot more things forward. And quite frankly, you're a lot more successful than I am, so you're doing something right. And I think, what I
I
really
don't
want
know
to pull
about
on
that,
is
Mr. Nate.
when you're assessing the brokerage and you're managing 22 other people and you're currently working on another pretty exciting thing coming down the pipeline for the investment side of things to get your greater
Sure.
audience involved, how do you one when you have that feeling of being stuck and you're just kind of on the treadmill but not really making progress, what do you mean by that? But then also, like, how do you get yourself out of that cycle? How do you step off the treadmill, get off the merry-go-round, however you want to frame that,
Yes.
but get yourself moving again?
It, when I feel stuck, I think in most cases these days, I am at least aware of where I'm aware of being stuck because I have an idea of that outcome that I want.
Hmm.
And over the last 5 years, we do a leadership meeting every week, and we have what's called a scorecard. And I'm not kidding you, that scorecard at this point has probably 60 or 70 inputs.
Hmm.
And so what I would say is, first of all, being stuck is normal, and we all, whether it's relationships or whether it's the business, but being aware of what it is. where you're kind of like, I don't know what, I don't know. It's just like the money isn't there. Well, that's not going to work. Is it the reorders? Is it the appointments aren't there, or is
Hmm.
it the appointments aren't being taken,
Hmm.
or are the calls not being set up?
Yep.
So I think that that's a really big part of it is understanding what part of this thing is stuck. And then I've tried to in the past, if it's not something I understand, then I would try to find somebody very quickly who understands it better than me.
Hmm.
And that's where that community is so important. And just going, you know what, our our show up ratio for our offsite appointments is at like 42%. And at that point, 6 out of 10 people aren't showing up and it's going to burn out my agents. Well, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, 3 years ago, I would have been distraught, and I'm sure I was, but now we know, well, that's going to be certainly part of the confirmation process.
Hmm.
And also we need to know, like, when we set that appointment, how are we building loyalty? And for us, like, we want to be on the phone 7 to 11 minutes because we don't want to talk ourselves out of the appointment. And so when I see agents who are so bummed because the person didn't show up and it was only a 2-minute call,
Yeah.
then I could have told them beforehand that they weren't going to show up. And that just, I think, comes with reps. But when I bring up that scorecard, what I mean is like understanding all the things that actually matter.
Yeah.
Because if you know the things that push your business forward, then you can start either saying like, okay, I can't get this one piece unstuck, so I'm going to go to this other piece that I know works. And instead of having, say 12 appointments set this week from organic Google, that we can't get unstuck because we don't have control. We're not doing ad spend.
Yep.
And maybe it's a website engineer going in and redoing meta stuff, meta tags and whatever, versus, hey, but our conversion rate on PPC is this percent, and we can just literally turn that dial up.
Yeah.
And that may not be a long-term thing, but at least it gets us past and closer to the outcome. And I think that's part of it too, is we're not focusing on like the being stuck. We're focused on like, oh, is this something that we can like move out of the road for us, or is this something we're just going to go around and forget about?
Yep.
Um, and and also that emotional load. I mean, Nate, like I would ask you, there's certain times where I feel pulled off my game because you'll get a not so great feedback, or from your team or from a consumer, and the last thing you want to do is have an emotional state pull you away from your best use of time. But I
Yep.
know it does for me. I mean, do you experience that as well?
For sure. I still do for sure. And I think everybody does. I think those that you used the word reps a little bit earlier, which is, I think, ultimately how the masters of their own emotion get through things is that they've been through challenging situations. And I will tell you, 4 or 5 years ago, something wouldn't go my way and I would just lose it. I would completely
Right.
crumble me. I'd lose the entire day, sometimes the entire week. Yeah, I'd be like, screw it.
Yeah.
I'm shutting down the business. I'm moving on.
I'm laughing with you, I promise.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've all been there, and it's
Right.
you start to learn, and I'm actually, Bree and I talk about this all the time, actually, because it's something that I don't think is discussed enough. So I appreciate the question, but it's learning to deal with setbacks in a healthy way. So I still get frustrated. I will tell you there are phone calls I'm waiting for and I have been waiting for, some of them for the last 2 months. And I
Right.
feel
Right.
stuck because I just need an answer, yes or no, and but it's out of my control. So what I've learned to do is say, okay, I've got let's go back to the nail analogy. You've got four
Sure.
nails. All right, this fourth nail I'm still working on, but it's out of my control. I've swung as much as I can. Maybe now it's guarded by something else or whatever. Maybe I need a different hammer that has to be delivered. So I'm going to focus on these other three nails while I'm still kind of maintaining this area over here. So to me, it's less of an emotional response now. I still get frustrated. It usually passes in the first hour, but I make sure,
Sure.
number one, I don't let it ruin the rest of my day. Whatever is happening, still happens and it's got to get done. And that is just the power of habitual growth in the essential action list, quite frankly, because it doesn't matter
Yes.
what goes on in your day. Like you get your stuff done before you go to bed and that's it. Like there's no excuses.
Well, and I love that about habitual growth, just the fact that it's so binary. Like I'm a to-do list. I think like, human nature is like I want to like check this box.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is when you have structure that you believe because you've put in the effort and you have the clarity in your vision, but the structure is moving you towards the person you want to be,
Yeah.
to achieve the things that you want to achieve, then all you have to worry about is executing in the dominoes that are already set up for you.
Yep.
And
Yep.
you just go, if you've got a big block of open time and you get emotional missile coming your way, the idea that you're going to be creative and developing awesome things is highly unlikely. But if you have in that time, hey, I need to have 3 Canva templates for my new ad set.
Yep.
I am doing those templates. And in a perfect world, you would refer to the resources that you've outlined to help you do that.
Yeah.
And that's part of it too, right? Is it's off topic, I know, but when we are vague or broad, like, oh, okay, make business profitable. It's easy to fail for one.
Hmm.
It's very hard to win, and especially in a checkbox kind of way.
Yeah.
So I think just like clarity in the task at hand or even the project at hand, and when you've got that calendar filled up and you know what to do when, you might take a little walk to brush it off, right? You want to
Yep.
get those missiles, but you're right. You keep going because you know you have to.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to, and action is the only thing that moves you forward, and which most people know. It's still the challenge for most people is how do you deal with the negative consequences of something. And kind of the last part that I was going to share, just on feeling stuck or dealing with those negative emotions, I actually use it, number one, to make sure I get as far along as I possibly can on that one thing, but then I also use those opportunities to figure out which nail to go after next. Right. And so, as you mentioned, let's say there's 4 nails, you can only hit 2 or 3 of them. If you've moved one forward, or sorry, if you've moved one as far down as it
Right.
possibly can, you got to figure out where to go next. And so I now look at situations where let's take the example that you used of trying to generate revenue for the business when you're starting it out, right? You
Right.
realize, hey, this isn't working. I've done the numbers game. You're not getting, yes, you're frustrated at the bank account, but at the end of the day, your next step was, okay, well, what's the next question? Okay, well, we don't have any money. All right, well, why don't we have any money? Well, because we're not getting any appointments. Okay, we're not getting any appointments because guess what? Ed's not making any phone calls.
Right.
And that's a great real time example because that's actually what's happening in a couple of my businesses as well, where it's you get to a certain point and you've got 3 nails in front of you and you say, okay, well, I can't do these other things if there's no revenue for the company. I can't do any more if I don't have an assistant. I'm putting my family at risk if I don't spend more quality time with them. So it allows you to kind of channel that emotion into something else, help you problem solve, and then say, okay, I've identified this nail number one. I don't know if that's the solution, but I'm going to put all my energy into this one
Right.
thing and get it pounded down so that if it's not right, I'll know definitively. But if it's something else and it does work, guess what? Now I have the opportunity to hit nails 2, 3, and 4 again. And so I kind of use that to look at opportunities and say, hey, I'm going to try this, I'm going to experience it, and then I'm either going to pivot or I'm going to say, no, this is actually working. I've been able to identify the first problem. Now I'm going to move on to other greater things because there's always going to be a bottleneck in the system, no matter what.
Well, absolutely, and it's interesting because, and I'm trying to think of the best way to like fit this into the analogy here, but what'll happen for me is, I mean, like I am so addicted to organizing that many times I'm like organizing the organizing. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It's
But
not color coded
you're
properly.
kind of like cleaning off the hammer.
Yeah.
You're like not even
Yeah.
swinging.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I just need to make sure it's ready to swing, and then it's going to be great. And it's 3 p.m., so I think I'll just swing it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so even if gosh, even if the nails are obscure, and this is what we coach, that massive effort will not be denied by the universe. And I believe that, and especially massive effort along with awareness. So you go,
Hmm.
wow, I tried really hard and it didn't really work, but this one little part worked.
Yep.
Um, you're better off. You're better off swinging. And
Yep.
if you've got three nails, consider yourself lucky because most people have zero nails
Yep.
and they have no idea.
Yep.
And sometimes I see not even I call them kids. I mean, kids like 20s and 30s and whatever. But I see them working really hard, but just not at all in the right direction. And I admire it because you're kind of like, all right, just do that. And now do that same thing you were doing, and you will get incredible results. And so all they're missing is the awareness piece.
Yeah.
But we believe that if you give us massive effort, and you're coachable, which I think is very similar to saying you're aware or willing to be aware of your own deficiencies, it's almost impossible for it not to work. It just the massive effort is hard to coach, and it's hard to. I would say it's impossible to want it for people. So that's
Hmm.
what we're up against many times is in a very low barrier entry.
Hmm.
Uh, Folks are getting in, and I think you see it everywhere, but just not necessarily wanting to put in that work uh, that Instagram or whatever else makes it seem isn't necessary in a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I agree. I think that is a significant challenge for a lot of people. And I can just speak from experience. It was for me. I was really good at
Right,
taking direction in my younger years. And I don't really think I'm going to use the word enlightened. I didn't really become enlightened into becoming more aware of my potential, but also the opportunities that existed in the world until I was willing to say, hey, this is going to take some time, right? I was listening to a
right,
podcast yesterday, which I thought was very interesting, and they articulated it very well, which is, the economic environment that we're in has trained us to just expect things, right? You can order a product and get it from Amazon in an hour, right? You take a
right,
job, you don't expect it to be hard, but you expect to have a massive paycheck, right? And I think once you adopt a different mindset, which becomes, what am I really getting out of this? Am I trainable? Going back to the vision that you shared earlier when you were getting into brokerage, I think that's really important because you had a vision. You were taking care of your family. You wanted to live a life in a certain way. You didn't want to necessarily be tied down. You wanted to have a surplus where possible and be comfortable. But I think people don't even take that original step. And so it just becomes this game of, hey, I'm doing this. I expect big things. And that's not the reality. There is, I'm going to use the word entitlement because I think the level of entitlement is there, but people don't know it exists because they haven't lived through anything else. Most younger generations have only lived with a computer in their pocket and Amazon Prime, delivering things in 1 to 2 hours versus, hey, I need to be frugal. I need to be resourceful. I need to build this skill set. This is super important. And there
right,
isn't really, even if you have those things, there isn't necessarily a direction that you're going with them. You just have them and you're applying them. And that's where that kind of, it's not wasted effort, but misdirected effort goes to, where if you're open and you're willing and you're saying, hey, Ed's got some knowledge. He's built himself a pretty successful brokerage. He's got, a ton of years in entrepreneurship and leadership and management abilities and real estate knowledge. What can I learn from him? How can I ask the right questions to help me become a better leader in this organization? And I think being able to flip that mindset is really kind of where habitual growth comes in. It's getting people to say, hey,
right,
you might be successful in your job, but are you really happy? Do you think you have more? Do you want this for the rest of your life? Or do you want to really see what you're made out of? And for the people that are willing to take that next step to say, like yourself, like, hey, I don't know where this is going to end up, but I'm damn sure going to enjoy the process. I'm going to apply everything I got. I have a vision. I don't know if it's going to work out, but the risk is worth taking. That's the mindset that I hope and wish a lot of people would take on because it just makes life way more enjoyable. It makes relationships deeper. It makes your satisfaction greater when you achieve certain things because you're not doing it alone. It's not 100% Ed. It's not 100% Nate. It's a team,
right,
but it's that collaboration. It's that taking the creative abilities of each person applying to themselves in their full potential way and seeing the fruits of the labor as we help each other out along the journey.
Well, and I love that we're talking about this because what you realize is like this ultimate outcome, and maybe that's a sale, and you and I have talked a lot about the brokerage and, I mean, whether that looks like a sale or is it, a strategic hire or hires or, putting together a board. Um, but I think that ultimate outcome very rarely happens in the iteration that you think that it happens.
Hmm.
And I've really learned to enjoy the journey and to know, I mean, speaking to kind of the emotional stuff, because it gets intense.
Yeah.
Um, you know, to know that like, hey, this is what it is. And
Hmm.
it's not just happening to me, this is what it is for everybody, and life happens for us,
Yeah.
not to us. And I think entitlement, that term is thrown around a lot, and it's probably warranted. But I would say, if you're an entrepreneur, you're not entitled because like no matter what, that like the earth's gonna spin, that money is gonna flow downhill.
Hmm.
And that at the end of the day, and I say this sometimes to my agents, and I'm sure it won't be very eloquent, but nobody cares. Like maybe your parents care a little bit, but if you fail and have to declare bankruptcy, for one, I guess that's what it's there for, right? But nobody cares, And I think like to one, it's kind of like, hey, you're not that special, and number two, hey, if that has to happen, then get up and do it again.
Yep.
Get up and live valiantly and push hard. Um, because this feeling that like we're going to be coddled or taken care of or that there's this safety net, that's not real.
Hmm.
And when you're an entrepreneur, of course, you're reminded of that quite often, just the good and the bad, I suppose.
Yes. No, 100%. And we could, I know we're gonna have a couple more of these, so we're gonna
Right.
save that topic because we could talk for hours on that as we do. But um, are there just on the topics that we've had at hand today, are there any more parting thoughts of wisdom you'd like to share with the audience?
Gosh, I think what changed my life in just such a major way, and I talked about the Tony Robbins, and so I've always been, and I think like you as well, right, Nate, and like most entrepreneurs, you kind of have this hustle,
Hmm.
and I would say that if I were smarter with it, like if I were clear with what my nail was, and I sharpened that axe, or polished the hammer, I would be further along. And so, organization for me and being really clear in sort of like, hey, this is what I need to have happen here. Okay. And it's not only professional, it's everything. Like,
Hmm.
hey, it's important that we go camping. So it's going to be on this list to make sure I don't miss it. But whatever that is, the life experiences, or maybe it is lag revenue measures or appointment measures. Um, if we can start here, then we can have a pretty good idea. I've always been hard at the 10-year vision, but if it's say a 3-year vision or a 1-year vision, you
Hmm.
can start chunking it out per quarter and say, okay, the lead measures would probably have to be this,
Yeah.
and the lag measures would have to be this. And so, I mean, as silly as it sounds, you could say, hey, I'm going to need to have 200 listing appointments set
Hmm.
because our conversion rate is 67%, and that's going to get this amount, and my one to close ratio is this. But let's just say that you want to go on a huge family vacation. Like you want to be in Mexico or Italy, over the holidays. That's not just going to happen. And so if you look at, okay, I want that to happen. I want it to happen in December. And, Becky and I are talking about this, and I'm super excited about it. It totally breaks our comfort zone to spend a couple of weeks, and that's all we're talking about. But there are lead and lag measures that need to have happen. Now
Yeah.
we have the easy stuff, which is like, hey, I need to have a place kind of earmarked, if not reserved. I need to have flights earmarked, if not reserved. And probably, if we're honest with ourselves, we need to have a certain amount of money in that account that we need to feel comfortable with, and that needs to align with the kind of experience that we want to have. And then we also need to be in a place personally, with our relationships, our profession, our employment, our workspace, our businesses, but where you could do that and it would work. And so I only use that example because I feel like some of the super qualitative stuff, you can sort of like, hey, yeah, like that's this other cool thing, but you could actually like organize and gamify it and engineer it to be tracked and hit. Or
Yeah.
if you can't hit it, you would know why. And most likely it wouldn't go away. It would just get pushed into 2026.
Yep.
So that the organizational approach has really helped me understand what's important and how to walk in that path towards those nails, to
Yeah.
continue the analogy,
Yeah.
to hit them.
It's massive. That's huge. I love it. We'll definitely pick more up on that because I've got a lot of things to say on that, but I know I've taken up plenty of your time. So, one, thank you for joining us and spreading this knowledge. You have so much insight, so much knowledge inside that, we want to extract that I know can help so many people. And two, I just want to make sure that you're recognized for all your accomplishments and you understand that your journey hasn't been easy. You've put in a lot of that effort. So I've had a front row seat for some of it, obviously, but the more that this community can help you out and support you, we are here for you. We are a community dedicated to growing people's lives one day, one action, and one thought at a time. And the big part of this is learning from others. So because of this, we've created a free habitual growth Facebook community where you can find interviews, additional resources, bonus content, and so much more support to help you along the way in your growth transformation. And the best part is it's all absolutely free at no cost to you. So if you're somebody who's wanting to make a change in your life, head over to the app or the Play Store and download the Habitual Growth app now for your free trial. It doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, you work for somebody else, or you're just determined to make changes in your own life. These principles and this process work for everybody. For more information about habitual growth or any questions we can answer for you, shoot us an email at info@habitualgrowth.com. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the next video, and until then, keep inspiring others to do more.